Hello, my science friends. It's Miss Marcie here, and I am bringing you a special science lesson. I miss you guys, and I can't wait till we are all back together. I hope you and your families are doing great and enjoying this special time together. And now, here's a little lesson to help you enjoy it even more. So, today I thought we would start talking about the moon. And in a few minutes, I'm going to read you a book called Our Moon. And then we're going to do a fun experiment that uses cookies. I know, sorry, Mom and Dad. We don't have to eat the cookies, but we do need them for the experiment. You can get Oreo cookies or any kind of little cream cookies with something in the middle. I don't advise double stuff for this, but doesn't matter the color of the stuffing or anything like that. And you're also going to need a sheet called Phases of the Moon. I guess this is hard to read because it's backwards. And a link for this will be sent to you as well, so you can print it out. And then you will also need some toothpicks, okay? Kids, these are sharp. Please be careful, okay? I've never really done a video like this before, so I'm going to start to get used to where I need to look and how to do it correctly. So please forgive me. I promise these will get better and better as time goes by. And the only other thing I think you need for this is maybe some paper towel. I used precious toilet paper, but I would advise paper towel or just a washcloth or something. You'll see why in a few minutes. The reason I thought we should look at the moon is because the moon goes through a lot of changes. We call those changes phases. That's a big fancy word for change. And those phases happen over the course of an entire month. And it may mean we may not see each other for the course of an entire month. So, how fun would it be if you guys get to stay up a teeny tiny bit later every night and look at the moon outside your window, or maybe you can walk outside and look up at the sky and see the phases, see the changes that the moon is going to be going through this month. And then when we meet together, we can talk about what you noticed. Maybe you can even print out 2 copies of this sheet and maybe draw the phases of the moon and when you see them. That would be a neat extension. So I'm going to read this book to you, and then we will do the project with the cookies. The story is called Our Moon. It's a nonfiction book. That means it's telling us true facts about the moon. And its authors are Marcie Burton, Kathy French, and Tammy Jones. I will read the page and then I will show the pictures, okay? What do I see when I look at the moon? I can see the moon at night. Sometimes it is big and bright. So we know we can see the moon at night. Anyone ever seen it during the day? Sometimes you can see the moon during the day. That's a neat thing to look out for. Sometimes when I look out at night, the moon looks small and not so bright. And there's an example of that. Then there are times when I cannot find the moon at all in the night sky. Did the moon disappear? Don't worry, it's always there. It just changes. What is the moon? Long ago, people were not sure what the moon was. Now we know. The moon is a ball, a sphere, made of rock that spins around the earth. The moon, though, does not have its own light or its own heat. Where do you think the moon gets its light and heat from? What else is up there in the sky that it could get its light and heat from? Think about it. I can see some of you calling out the answers now, I bet. Oh, sorry, skipped showing you that page. There's a close-up of the moon, that big ball of spinning rock. The moon looks bright to us. The moon looks bright to us because the sun shines its light on it. That's where it gets its light from. And then that light shines from the moon back to us. So from the sun to the moon, back to us. And we see it. Moonlight is just the reflection of the sun's light back to the earth. And here's a little diagram that explains that. Here's the sun shining its light to the moon, and we see it reflected back here on our planet Earth. Pretty cool, huh? The moon looks like it's the same size as the sun, right? Looks like it's about the same size. But it is not. Not at all. The moon is actually pretty small. The moon looks as big as the sun because the sun is so far away. So things that are far away look smaller. The moon is much closer to the earth, so it looks bigger than it really is. And that's why they look about the same. But in reality, in real life, the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon. This picture kind of gives you an idea of the different sizes. So that's the size of the sun. There's planet Earth, and there's the moon. Look at the difference between the moon and the sun. That sun is 400 times bigger than the moon. Wow. Does the moon change shape? When we look at the sky, it looks like it changes shape. Is there like a man or a woman in the moon every night hammering out chunks of it so it can change shape and look different? No, not at all. The moon will always be that sphere. It will always be that ball of rock. But the reason it looks like it changes shape is because the sun and the moon are in new places in the sky whenever we see them, whenever we look at them. So these are the different phases or changes of the moon and what they're called, okay? So sometimes we see, I'm going to read this, I'm sorry, and then I'll hold it up. Sometimes we see all of the moon, the whole thing, and that's called a full moon, right? That's when the wolves are howling. I'm just teasing you. Okay. Sometimes we only see half the moon. Now remember, the whole moon is still there. But because of where the sun is and the way the light is reflecting, we only see half of the moon. Sometimes we see no moon at all. Did it disappear? No, it's still there. We just can't see it. Sometimes we see the other half of the moon, not the same half that we saw earlier. And sometimes we see the full moon again. And these changes are happening every month because the location, the place where the sun and the earth and the moon are keep changing in space. And so whenever those places change, their locations change, the amount of light that's reflecting onto the moon and then back to earth changes. And that's why we see different parts of the moon at different times of the month. Sorry, did I show you that? Here we go. Here's that little chart that I just read about the full moon and then half of the moon and then the new moon. Isn't that interesting? It's called the new moon. You would say it's the zero moon or there's no moon at all, but it's actually the new moon. There's a half moon again, but the other half, and then back to the full moon. And we're actually going to learn about a couple more changes, a couple more phases too when we do our experiment. Okay, we're on our last page of the book now. Sometimes the moon looks like this. We see all of the lighted part, and this is called the full moon. There it is up there. Sometimes the moon looks like this. We see some of the lighted moon and some of the dark moon. That's what you would call a half moon. Sometimes the moon looks like this. we can see a little of the lighted moon and a lot more of the dark moon. That's called a crescent moon. A crescent kind of looks like a crescent roll, if you've ever had a roll piece of bread that looks like that. And then finally, sometimes we don't see any moon at all. That happens when the dark part of the moon is turned towards the earth. So it's not getting any sunlight, right? And that's called the new moon. It's there, I promise. The moon is there. You just can't see it. So that's what our book told us about our moon. But now we get to move on to our cookie experiment. So, the phases of the moon, we are going to create them on this sheet using the cookies. And for this sheet, you're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cookies, okay? And what you're going to have to do with the cookies is this. I have one cookie here that I'm going to experiment with. So I took a cookie, and you want to open it up. But when you open it up, you want all of the cream to stay on one side, and you want none of the cream, or maybe just a little tiny bit, on the other side, okay? Now, that takes some practice. Sometimes you open up the cookie and watch what happens. Sometimes the cookie breaks in pieces. That's what happened to me a few times. And sometimes you open it up and you get some cream on one side, and then you've got another big mess of the cream on the other side. Blech. So we don't want to waste too many cookies. Do your best, and you can still use them. If they break, it's not a big deal. Of course, because you're working with food, wash your hands. Make sure the food you're using is safe for you and your family, no allergies. And, always check with your parents and don't eat all the cookies without permission. Okay, so you're going to start by getting all your cookies ready. Open up all 8 of your cookies so they're ready like this, okay? And now we're ready to take our toothpick, okay? Remember, they can be sharp. Be careful. We're going to use our toothpick as a tool, and we're going to use it as a tool to scrape off some of the cream to create the moon. Our cookies are going to create the different phases or different changes of the moon, okay? And that's why I told you to get some paper towel or a tissue, because as you scrape it off, you'll see you're going to want to wipe off the toothpick on there so you don't have too big of a mess, okay? All right, so we're going to start with our new moon. And if you remember, our new moon is the moon that you can't see. There's no light being shown on it and reflecting back to Earth. So the new moon is very easy. You don't have to do a lot of work. You actually just take the cookie part, not the part that had the cream, and that's your new moon. And you could put it right down on the paper where it says new moon. So that's your very first one. Done. Okay? Now, remember we talked about that little itty bitty crescent moon. We're going to create that next. But I want to tell you something. As the moon is growing, as it's starting its cycle with the new moon, we call it a waxing moon. A growing moon, a moon that's getting bigger. Now remember, the actual moon's not getting bigger, but the light that we're seeing is reflecting more parts of the moon, so it looks bigger to us. Though that's called a waxing moon, okay? So we have our waxing moon. Are we ready? So for our waxing moon, we're going to take our cookie and we're going to scrape to make a waxing crescent. Zoop, 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 zoop. Uh-oh, my puppy dogs are barking in the background. I hope they're not bothering you. They just got a bath, so they're very mad at Miss Marcie. Okay, so I just scraped, and I created our waxing crescent. We see just that little crescent of the moon, okay? All right, I'm going to put our waxing crescent right down on our next spot. Remember, waxing means what we're seeing is growing. So our next stage, our next phase of the moon is our first quarter moon. Okay, and we're going to take our cookie and we're going to scrape, 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 kind of right down the middle. And that is called our first quarter moon, or our waxing quarter. Okay, that's what that looks like. Parents, I know it looks like half, but when you think about it, it's really just a quarter because of the sphere. But that's a little too much. Yeah, I'll leave that for you guys to explain. So here is our first quarter moon that we scraped off and we put down. All right, now we're coming to Miss Marcie's favorite moon word. This is the next phase of the moon is called the waxing gibbous. Can you say that? The waxing gibbous. I love a gibbous moon. A gibbous moon looks like this. A gibbous moon is actually, you can see almost the whole thing. We're not at the full moon yet, but the waxing gibbous has almost all of the moon shining from the sun's light, of course. And that's our waxing gibbous moon. Pretty cool. And the word gibbous is just so fun to say. Okay? Full moon. Not a lot of work to do on the full moon because you can see the whole thing. That sun's light is reflecting on the moon and right back to the earth, and we can see the whole thing. So here's our full moon. I don't have to scrape any of it off, and I'll put it right down there. Okay? At the end, I'll put the camera on this. Actually, I can show you the sample here. So right now we're at the full moon. So we're halfway through our cycle. Remember, the moon's phases, the changes, this whole cycle takes about 1 month, about 30 days, right? So we're about halfway through. We're at 15 days. Pretty exciting. And I'm not sure when you're going to watch this video, so I don't know what phase we'll be at when you watch it, but you can start right there and move through the phases that way, right? Or if this is where we are, you could move through the phases this way. So it doesn't matter. It just keeps going around and around each month, right? Okay. Okay, ready? So now we're at the full moon. Now the parts of the moon that we see are getting smaller. So we are not waxing anymore. We're not getting bigger anymore. We are waning. We're getting smaller. So now I still get to say gibbous because we're going to have our waning gibbous now. And here is our waning gibbous. I've scraped off just a little bit from my full moon, and I have our waning gibbous now. Okay, so our moon is starting to get smaller and smaller. And after our waning gibbous, we have our last quarter of the moon. Quarter means something's divided in 4 parts. We had our first quarter, and then we went to our gibbous and our full moon and our waning gibbous, and now we're at our very last quarter. And so this is what our last quarter looks like. Scraped off about half of it. And again, this is a waning quarter because we see less and less, and the moon looks like it's getting smaller. And then finally, we have our waning crescent. We can see just a little bit left of the moon, our waning crescent. And when that disappears, the moon's still there, remember. But when that disappears, we'll be right back to the beginning with our new moon again. So those are all the phases. We start with our new moon, and then we've got our waxing crescent, our first quarter, our waxing first quarter, our waxing gibbous, almost the whole moon we can see, and then finally our full moon, and then we start to see less and less, so the moon is waning. Our waning gibbous, our waning last quarter, and our waning little crescent before we return to our new moon. So remember, waxing, the light that we see reflected makes the moon look like it's bigger. And waning. The light that's reflected makes the moon look smaller. So those are the phases of the moon with the Oreo cookies. If you have any questions, please have Mom and Dad send me an email. My email address is Marcie, Marcie, Levine, Levine, Jacobs, Jacobs, @gmail.com. That's Marcie Levine Jacobs @gmail.com. Or you can send me a text, 917-626-4224, 917-626-4224. In fact, I would love to see pictures of your Oreo cookie or whatever brand you choose to use, phases of the moon. Please send me pictures so I can see what you're up to. And if you have any ideas of science lessons, any topics you want, I'll see what I can do to work on some lessons for you. I will try my best to be back every week. I'm not sure what these weeks are going to look like. I have my 12-year-old and my 10-year-old at home. I got to figure out teaching them over the next few weeks. But I miss you guys so much, and I want to spend some time with you too, of course. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm open to constructive criticism and feedback. And take care, be healthy and well. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.